Alright, that guy's doing today. We're about to hop into a little reaction to first things first. I would love to make sure you like the video, hit a like, exit full screen, scroll just a little bit, like the video, and then full screen it back up. You feel me? And if you're a little confused, the Falcons are my second favorite team. So yeah, go birds. Two types. Anyway, so today's video is coming from Testify, titled "Actually, we do know who wrote the Gospels," because this always intrigued me. I never got any sources on how people know who wrote the Gospels and who they wrote it for. A lot of people say, oh yeah, this was written for this and this was written for that, so we can see that in this culmination of verses and this why he talked about it like this and all that. So kind of want to dive a little bit into that and see what the historical records say or show. So this is coming from Testify, 20K subscribers. Let's check it out.
A lot of critics claim that the Gospels were anonymous, slapped with famous names to later boost their credibility. But the evidence shreds that theory. From historical consistency to early church testimony, it's pretty clear these weren't anonymous works cooked up by fanfiction enthusiasts. Sure, the Gospels don't start with, "Hi, I'm Matthew," but just because the authors don't introduce themselves doesn't mean their names weren't known. Scholar Martin Hengel notes that titles like "According to Mark" were likely added before the first century ended. Well, why is that? It's to tell them apart as the Gospels began to circulate more widely. By the mid-2nd century, names like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were universally tied to these texts.
See, I also want to know what the actual names were. I'm sure I can go into the. Actually, no. Well, my KJV, actually, the Bible that I use, it usually comes with a little pre-book knowledge or whatever. So I bet if I go in there and look at Mark, for example, it'll tell me what Mark's name was in whatever language it started in, right? Probably. So it says the ancient title for this gospel was Catamarcon, or I don't know why I did that in a French accent. That's the second language that I'm most familiar with. So I guess the Cata Marcon, according to Mark, the author is best known by his Latin name Marcus or Marcus. I'm not sure. In Jewish circles, he was called by his Hebrew name John, which in Acts 12:25 referred to him as John, whose surname was Mark. So yeah, that that's apparently what the text says. But anyway, let's continue on with the video.
Compare that to books like Hebrews, where authorship debates raged on. With the Gospels, we see zero debates. Wherever they popped up, Asia, Africa, or Rome, they carried the same names. Scholar Craig Evans points out that every surviving Gospel manuscript with a start or finish includes the traditional names. No anonymous versions, no competing names. The Gospels were never anonymous. And the case for Gospel authorship isn't just early, it's global. Testimonies from across the ancient world back it up. Papias, writing in Asia Minor in the early 2nd century, said that Mark wrote down Peter's teachings and Matthew compiled Jesus' sayings in either Hebrew or Aramaic. Justin Martyr, writing probably in Rome in the mid-2nd century, called the Gospels the memoirs of the apostles and their companions. His student Tatian even harmonized the four into one epic story, the Diatessaron. Diatessaron literally means through four and includes our four Gospels. Irenaeus, writing in Gaul in the late 2nd century, explicitly names Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, calling them the church's pillars. Tertullian, writing in North Africa in the late 2nd century, defended these four while rejecting heretical knockoffs without apostolic ties. Clement of Alexandria, writing in Egypt in the late 2nd century, confirmed Mark wrote down Peter's teaching, and he linked Luke to the Apostle Paul. Then there's the Muratorian Fragment, an early canon list that was written in the late 2nd century. It names Luke as Paul's companion and John as the author of the fourth gospel. So this isn't a regional fan club hyping their favorites, it's a worldwide chorus all pointing to the same four names. And the early church didn't just shrug off forgeries. Apostolic connection wasn't optional, it was absolutely mandatory. The Muratorian canon called a fake letter of Paul to the Alexandrians and the Laodiceans, saying, "It is not fitting that gall be mixed with honey." Translation, keep the fake junk out. Serapion of Antioch rejected the Gospel of Peter for falsely using Peter's name. A presbyter who forged the Acts of Paul and Thecla was defrocked. Even a bishop who faked 3 Corinthians out of love for Paul also got booted. And Tertullian mocked Marcion's anonymous gospel, quipping that a document without a credible author doesn't hold its head erect. The church was relentless in preserving authenticity. Finally, let's think about the names of the authors. If the Gospels were forgeries, the names chosen don't make a whole lot of sense. If you're inventing a gospel, you'd slap Peter or James on it, not Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Mark was not an apostle. The guy ditched Paul and Barnabas mid-mission and may have caused their split. Luke was a Gentile non-eyewitness and Paul's companion. Why pick an outsider when you could have gone with an apostle? Oh, and by the way, his gospel was certainly no mystery to Theophilus, the very person it was dedicated to. Finally, there's Matthew, a tax collector. To Jews, tax collectors were traitors, Rome's lackeys. If you're fabricating a gospel, why would you use his name? Interestingly, Matthew mentions money in his gospel way more than the other evangelists and has 10 unique stories surrounding money in his particular gospel. The simplest answer, these names were not PR stunts. They were the actual authors. Overall, the evidence strongly points to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, I'll be diving more into the evidence in future videos for the traditional authorship, and I'll also be considering objections. So be sure to subscribe and stay tuned. Thanks for watching.
Very solid video. I don't want to necessarily put 100% in stone that what I want to do for the next few reactions, but I definitely want to dive into how more the evidence, one, and two, how they know who they were written for. Because I know Matthew, it says that it was written for a Jewish audience, or one of them is written for a Jewish audience. I didn't know that Luke was a Gentile. I knew that he was around Paul and them because obviously he wrote the Gospel of Luke, but he also wrote Acts. And I believe there's talk that he wrote Hebrews. I don't think he wrote Hebrews, but I think there's talk that he did. I think that's what Pastor Paul said. I'm not sure. Either way, doesn't really matter, right? We can see that church history pretty much backs these up. Not that I'm the biggest fan of church history, but I'd say in this case, you know, it's useful there, you know. Not to say that I hate church history or wouldn't believe in it at all. It's just like some things based on like the traditional aspect rather than like pure scripture I kind of look at in sideways, but I'm not an authority figure. I'm just a student learning things. So if y'all have any comments, let me know down below. Let me know your thoughts. If you agree, disagree, have some stuff I should check out. See y'all in the next video. Peace.